And I want to thank Secretaries McHugh and James and Generals Erno and Welsh for your distinguished service to our country and for coming here today to testify to this committee. I'd like to start, Secretary McHugh, with you and General Erno. The Army force structure and personnel manning projections were based on a set of assumptions about very limited commitments to the Middle East, Europe, and Afghanistan. Under the 2016 budget request, the Army's end strength would decrease to 450,000 by the end of 2018. Mr. Secretary and General Erno, you have both testified in the past that this level is the minimum force necessary to execute national defense strategy. But you've also mentioned that everything in that estimate relies on the underlying assumptions regarding required operations. With a resurgent Russia imposing violence on its neighbors, ongoing commitments to fight radical Islamic terrorism and groups like ISIS, and the potential for a longer-term commitment to Afghanistan, how confident are you that these numbers are enough to fight and win a regional conflict?
Senator, what I would say is there's concern. And again, these numbers, what we originally developed, were based on the fact that we would not have to have a significant presence in Europe. That was assumed that there would not be significant issues there, that we would not have a prolonged presence in the Middle East. And for any, so if we have a prolonged, and I mean a larger presence than we have there today, a prolonged larger presence than we have there, and if we have to have a presence in Europe, or if there's some significant more aggression than we've had so far, and we had to sustain that for a long period of time, i.e. over a year or two, then our force structure would not be enough to meet those requirements.
Senator, if I could add.
Sure.
As you noted, and as the Chief and I have testified, the 450 number is the absolute minimum we need to do the things we see today. And as your remarks clearly illustrated, a lot of the things we see today we didn't see a year ago, 18 months ago. And it is that unknown that truly troubles certainly me and I think the rest of us at this table. Former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates once said that when it comes to predicting the future, our record is perfect. We've been wrong every time. and I truly worry about that next thing that we don't see, or the things we are dealing with today that all of a sudden exceed their bounds. And you know, we would be hard-pressed to answer that bell.
Mm-hmm. General Erno, in your personal judgment, what number of soldiers would be required to perform the functions that are needed?
In 2012, when we originally developed the Defense Strategic Guidance, we developed it with an idea of an end state of 490,000, 350 in the Guard and 205 in the U.S. Army Reserve. And that was based on our analysis of what we thought we would have to do. So I would say that that's about the level I think we should be at in order to meet the future needs. But again, I have testified, and I stick with it, that I think 450 is the minimum, but it assumes a lot of things. And so if those assumptions are all right, we're okay. If they start to go wrong, we have no wiggle room. And that's why I think the 490, 350, 205 is the right number.
Well, and let me ask a follow-up question, which is if we find ourselves in a situation where we've cut the Army to 450 and suddenly need to grow, we have too little capacity. Can you provide an estimate on the length of time and effort it takes to reconstitute the force, and not just the size, but the readiness we would need?
So, Senator, in 2005 and 6, when we grew the Army, it took us 30 months to grow one brigade. And that's to recruit it, and that's to individually train it and collectively train it. So it would take 30 months to develop a new brigade if we had to do that.
Secretary James and General Welsh, the National Defense Panel observed that the Air Force's bomber, fighter, and surveillance forces are scheduled to draw down to approximately 50% of the current inventory by 2019. What do you believe is the proper approach to increasing the Air Force's ISR and long-range strike capabilities?
Senator, I'm not exactly sure what those numbers mean, but we have been drawing down for quite some time. As the chairman mentioned at the beginning of this hearing, in the first Gulf War, the Air Force deployed 33 fighter squadrons, but we had 5 times that many in reserve to do something else. This budget will take us to 49 fighter squadrons. If we have another event like the first Gulf War, which is the last time we deployed a full air power package, it would be, just on the fighter side, 33 fighter squadrons. It would require 14 for Homeland Security, if there's any kind of increased risk to the homeland, which there likely would be in that scenario. And that would leave you with 2 other squadrons to do whatever else you want to do in the world, to include things like Iraq and Syria, Afghanistan, anything in the Balkans, the Levant, Eastern Europe, all the other things we have force structure in today. The problem is quantity does have a quality all its own in this business. It just does.
So in your personal judgment, what level is required to adequately protect this country?
Well, we understand we have to be part of the solution to the debt problem. Everybody in the department understands that. What we can't do is continue to downsize every capability area, not just fighter squadrons. We're cutting every one of our 5 core mission areas in this budget, as we did last year and the year before. The trend is all in the wrong direction in every mission area, and we don't see it stopping. That's the danger, Senator.
And if I could add, Senator, the way I would put it is we think, just like you heard the Army say, that the President's budget level is our bare minimum in order to do what we're supposed to do under the strategy. That doesn't mean it's perfect. That, you know, we already feel like we made some important down payments, and we are certainly scrubbing all the time, looking for additional efficiencies. So I would say that budget level is what we consider our bare minimum in order to do the strategy as it's laid out right now. We'll have to rewrite the strategy if we don't get it. And then a couple other points I would make on long-range strike. We need to modernize it, so that's why we are investing in the F-35. We're investing in the long-range strike bomber. And then when it comes to ISR, of course, partly as a result of the additional dollars in this President's budget level above sequestration, we were able to essentially buy back some of the investment that we otherwise might have retired in some of our systems, like the U-2, for example, like the AWACS. Some of these we're going to retire. We would prefer not to retire them, at least not so early, because we need replacements for these things. So the budget does provide for both long-range strike and ISR investments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. And